Cryoffear does not begin with a monster. It begins with impact. A body struck, a life divided into before and after. From that moment forward, the game is no longer about survival, it's about fragmentation. About what happens when identity fractures under trauma and does not fully reassemble. The city you explore is not simply abandoned, it is hollowed out, and everything inside it exists for one purpose: to give shape to something Simon cannot face directly. Cryoffear is not about being hunted, it is about unable to escape from yourself. The accident is not a moment frozen in time, it is a rapture that echoes endlessly. Simon's body is struck, but the blow fractures more than the bone. It shatters expectation, erodes certainty, and leaves the self he knew inaccessible. What he loses is not merely movement, but momentum. The quiet sense that life is something that unfolds naturally. Independence, confidence, purpose, each slip through his grasp, leaving a hollow where identity once resigned. Trauma is no longer an event. It is a constant erosion of continuity, a slow leak of self into the shadows of memory. Time stretches differently in this fractured reality. Days collapse into one another, conversations fade, friends drift into trajectories he cannot follow. Stuff that grounded him, such as interaction, shared understanding, routine, vanishes. In its place, doubt hardens, and even trial failures feel like irrevocable verdicts. The future narrows not with sudden rapture, but with subtle constriction, until possibility itself feels like a distant echo. Depression does not announce itself, it settles like dust, filling the empty spaces between moments, coding perception in muted gray. When the player steps into the game, the collapse is already in motion. Simon's footing is gone. The mind that should anchor him is fractured. Fear lingers, confusion spreads, and each encounter becomes amplified by the fragility of his inner world. The city, the alleys, the oppressive silence all resonate within the instability already embedded in his sight. Horror emerges not only from the monsters, but from the absence of stability, from being adrift inside a self that can no longer orientate itself. Simon's mind does not keep its anguish contained. It spills outward, shaping the world in its own unstable image. Fear drips into alleyways, twisting walls into angles that seem almost hostile. Rage crawls along the streets like a low, relentless tide. Guilt clings into the corner and shadows, waiting to strike. The horrors that he confronts are not strangers. They are fragments of himself, given limbs, eyes, and teeth. By shaping to what cannot be endured internally, Simon approaches his pain at a remove, a terrifying illusion of mastery. This externalization transforms suffering into interaction, yet it does not heal. Anxiety stalks the corridors, self-loathing lunges from darkened corners, and fear becomes a palpable opponent that can be fought, but never truly destroyed. Even the act of writing his own thoughts is a ritualized displacement. The journal captures scattered chaotic emotion and reorders it into narrative, but it does not reconcile the fractures inside him. Each page, like the city itself, is a stage for rehearsal, a space where pain can be faced yet remains unresolved. The trapped is subtle but inescapable. Every defeated creature leaves a hollow sense of triumph. Every cleared path folds back into new corridors of threat. The relief of action is a ephemeral, a thin veneer over the chaos it cannot touch. Projection allows Simon to act against his suffering without ever fully acknowledging it. In this cycle, survival is possible, but understanding is always just out of reach. The world he navigates is both a reflection and a cage, where every victory merely rehearses the next confrontation. Bodies in cryoffear are no longer neutral vessels. They are language, geometry, and warning all at once. Crawling shapes drag themselves across broken streets. Bandaged silhouettes twist at impossible angles. Mutilated forms collapse into the world as if gravity itself rejects them. Recognition precedes revulsion. The uncanny familiarity of the human body distorted beyond comprehension, which evokes the deepest unease. Limbs buckle, movements stutter, and the body becomes a terrain of fragility and betrayal. Simon's trauma is left in flesh as much as in thought. His loss of physical autonomy ripples outward, reshaping how he experiences himself and how he perceives the world. Each enemy embodies that deformation, reduced mobility, crooked structure, incomplete forms, all physical echoes of internal collapse. Combat is no longer mere survival, it is a negotiation with vulnerability. Each strike, stab, or shot is a defiant assertion that he will not be defined entirely by weakness. Yet the cycle is relentless. Every iteration of a distorted body returns in some new form, insisting that what is eternal cannot be vanquished externally. The horror is not only in the broken flesh, it is in what that flesh represents, a psyche trapped in repetition, a self that cannot fully reclaim wholeness. The body is simultaneously inseparable from the mind that projects it. Dr. Purnell occupies a space both threatening and necessary, a mirror reflecting Simon's own fragmented mind. His request to write seems simple, even benign, yet its implications cut deep. The act of writing gives shape to chaos, ordering diffuse emotion into something readable. The journal becomes a fragile bridge, a tool to map the terrain of suffering, offering a temporary sense of agency over a self that feels unmoored. But the bridge is rickety, and the path becomes circular. Writing evolves from processing to compulsion. Reflection hardens into rumination, and pages become stages upon which pain is endlessly replayed. The manuscript traps Simon in loops of memory and dread, reinforcing fractures rather than mending them. In Doctor Mode, which the player must destroy the book, symbolizes the confrontation necessary to escape the spiral. Sometimes, revisiting trauma without integration magnifies suffering instead of elevating it. The book is no longer a lifeline. It is a myriad of unhealed wounds, a apparatus that enforces obsession. Sophie is never love in cryoffear. She is a symbol, a projection of validation Simon cannot reach. Her rejection pierces the emptiness already carved by isolation, amplifying the self-doubt and inadequacy that have festered in silence. When connection has long been absent, perceived dismissal is interpreted as proof of worthlessness. Sophie embodies the attention and affirmation Simon craves, but cannot obtain, turning desire into depression, fixation into pathology. This eternal collapse takes shape externally in the carcass boss. The creature seated, mutilated, insert yet imposing, is Simon's despair made into flesh. Its form mirrors his perception of himself as nadir, trapped, diminished, dehumanized. Confronting it is more than combat. It is a confrontation with the physicality of self-loathing. Each strike is an attempt to assert agency over helplessness. Each hesitation is a reflection of eternal paralysis. The narrative allows choice, but not comfort. Flight represents retreat into illusion, projection and avoidance. Fighting is an act of fragile resistance, asserting presence against the inexorable pull of despair. There is no tidy resolution, only the oscillation between obsession and resistance. Survival is shaped less by external victory and more by engagement with the shadow of the mind. Cryoffear is oppressive because its horror is born from within. There are no external curse, no malevolent entity, only Simon and his mind, and the reality it constructs. Streets twist with anxiety, monsters stalk with his rage, and the journal perpetuates obsession. The collapse of distance between self and environment ensures fear is not abstract. It is intimate, inseparable from identity itself. Projection organizes trauma into tangible threats, yet offers no remedy. Each monster fought, each corner cleared is a temporary respite, a fleeting assertion of control. The city, the violence, the writing, all are expressions of unprocessed emotions. Attempts to master the external mirror only entrench the internal. The more he acts, the more the mind solidifies into a self-perpetuating cycle of suffering. The true adversary is Simon's own sight, ever constructing and escalating trauma into reality. The horror is existential. Unprocessed pain loops endlessly, intensifying without resolution. Victory is survival, not triumph. Endurance, not escape. The game forces the player into the weight of a mind that cannot forgive, cannot forget, and cannot heal. A darkness where existence itself is the measure of horror. Cryoffear terrifies not through what is seen, but through what is implied. It shows how trauma can fracture identity, how isolation can warp perception, and how projection can transform inner pain into an entire world, one vivid and convincing enough to trap its creator. The city is not cursed. It is a construct of Simon's psyche. The most unsettling truth is that Simon did not stumble into a nightmare. He built it himself, creating a reality that allowed him to avoid confronting the one that already believed existed.
Show me who you are, yeah, look at the side.